Aloha and welcome to episode 2 of the Hawaii Crypto Podcast. My name is Chuggy and I will be your host. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you're a fan of our content. I am not a licensed financial professional. Nothing I say should be taken as financial advice. This podcast is purely for entertainment purposes. Please consult with a financial professional for your financial advice. To get started, today in Dogecoin, KFC Canada has started to accept it as a method of payment. And in local news, PC Gamers, the largest local Hawaii PC cafe, has also started accepting Dogecoin. So today we kind of saw the market bounce in between the 50s and 60 cent ranges for Dogecoin. We saw a whale exit their position throughout the day, which kind of pushed it down into the 50s. And currently we're looking at about 60 cents. So for today's podcast, I wanted to kind of like take a more macro look at what's going on in the greater market, both in crypto and the stock market, as well as some, we can talk about housing and kind of the cost of goods as well. So of course, inflation's been on a lot of people's minds recently, and in 2021, we can kind of see that people have a better grasp of what inflation is, how it's realized, and how it affects your money and your investments. This is something that we didn't really see as commonplace back in the 2008 2009 recession that we hit. And I think we have a lot of good takeaways from that period of time, figuring out what makes the most sense, what vehicles are the best for storing our money and keeping value or beating inflation, as well as keeping money safe from kind of losses that are bound to happen every so often. So of course, with the round of stimulus checks going out, as well as kind of the general aid across the board for small large businesses, families with children, and just taxpayers alike, we're looking at inflation that's probably going to set in at a higher rate than what Janet Yellen is telling us. The other thing that happened recently is Berkshire Hathaway had their meeting. We also heard from Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, kind of their thoughts both on crypto and the market as a whole. If you kind of took a close look at all the different earnings calls from Q1, you'll notice that a lot of different CEOs talked about kind of their costs increasing in a very tangible way very quickly. We can probably see it in the lumber, prices that's kind of going up. I think the figure that I saw is the increase in lumber prices on average increases the cost of just building a home by $36,000, which is a huge increase. We're also seeing kind of the price of everything go up, everything from sugar to steel to, everything from raw materials all the way down the supply chain. So, the further or the longer supply chain really, the more inflation is kind of realized, right? It goes, your goods go through more and more middlemen, and by the time it hits the consumer, it's been marked up and the effect's been magnified quite a bit. We've kind of seen people really take an interest in managing their finances in a very active way in 2021, which I think overall is a good thing, right? There's so many different ways that you can invest your money, different ways to diversify your portfolio, and just different ways of obtaining any information that you want on pretty much any market out there. And I think having, this more informed public really will keep the market honest. And right now, as we're seeing, kind of the backlash, the common people, quote unquote, that are basically telling hedge funds that they're not fans of the funny business and kind of the different tools and strategies that they use to manipulate prices up and down. And as we see the crypto sphere kind of appreciating in value very, very quickly, it kind of shows their ability to really make a big change, kind of a grassroots change. And you especially see that with the Dogecoin community, of course. So, I think this is something that we should have a continuing conversation about, kind of check back on kind of this new attitude and this new generation of investors. Because, you have the younger generations investing as well. One of the things that I did the other day was I messaged one of my friends that works at the Hawaiian Humane Society, and I did a brief stint there where I helped them, kind of set up a big fundraising event a couple of years ago. And I asked them if they had accepted Dogecoin for donations, and it's not set up. And it would be something that they would take a look at when the new director comes in. And I basically told them that I'm strongly in favor of getting it set up as soon as possible, especially because especially with the Dogecoin community, there's this big philanthropic push that's kind of the undercurrent of it, where the they kind of use it as an acronym of do only good every day. And a lot of people have pledged part of their Dogecoin positions to go to local animal shelters, which is one of the best parts of the community as a whole. So I think, if we could, as a community, also let the Humane Society know that we'd be interested as individuals and as potential donors to go ahead and donate in Dogecoin, this would help generate action, right? This is the same thing that we've seen kind of with the pressure that was put on companies like Newegg and, any of these big companies where people en masse are saying, and, people are telling Amazon to do it. There's a rumor that, somebody on the customer support side said that they're working on accepting cryptocurrencies in the near future. All of this kind of uh, social pressure that is put on them because people want to have a way to actually use it as a currency, right? And we've seen kind of the people pioneer the space, like the Dallas Mavericks and the Houston Rockets and the Oakland A's, and Newegg, of course. And there's just so much more out there that we could do as a community. The more acceptance we get across the market, right? And one of the things that I was kind of the the notion that I had was the bigger and higher value Dogecoin gets, the more pressure is going to be on these big companies to then accept Dogecoin, because there's going to be people who have made a tremendous amount of money and are looking at ways of spending it essentially, and by giving them an avenue to spend it, especially if you're a giant corporation like Amazon that would really put it into practice as a currency to be transacted and something to reckon with in the future. Now, do I believe that Dogecoin is going to see more price spikes in the near future? Probably. I think it'll be not so much associated with big planned appearances like SNL. I think it'll be around kind of the big news that comes out when big marketplaces accept it. Places when Coinbase inevitably is going to list it. So the more Dogecoin gets out there, the easier it is to obtain, the easier it will be to spend and transact, and that's ultimately what the goal is going to be. So that's something to kind of like keep in mind, right, when we're looking at potential upside. Also, on the flip side, on the potential downside, if the people in charge of monetary policy, in charge of the Fed, and just people within the government are scared that cryptocurrency will affect the stability of long time markets such as the stock market, then there could be greater regulation. There may be, much harder hoops to jump through in order to do things. So that is something that, on the potential downside of cryptocurrency, that we could probably see. Um, I read somewhere today that New York State may be halting crypto mining in their state to do like an environmental impact survey to see what the actual environmental impact is. And apparently they've been putting a lot of mining companies and mining rigs up in upstate New York, where the weather is quite cool to keep, you know, all the CPUs and the GPUs cool, all the mining rigs. So, that may put a damper on some of it, especially if it's affecting the mining, which of course impacts the verification speeds of different crypto. Next thing I want to kind of touch on are collectibles. So, we saw the collectibles market really take off this year. Um, Everything from sports cards, and that was like a there's two reasons for that, right? The first one is every major sport announced that they're actually having seasons this year, where last year they either had a partial season or no season at all. So like the sports card market went crazy. There are shortages everywhere. People were pretty frugal with their money during kind of the uncertainty of Corona, and then now that we're kind of emerging from it, throw the stimulus on top of that, and you have people putting a lot of money into that hobby. Same thing goes for Pokemon. Of course, it's their 25th anniversary, so you see people going crazy. The people who were nostalgic about it when they were kids, a lot of them are parents now, right? And they have kids, and this is rekindling that love for Pokemon that they had back then. Plus, it's the 25th anniversary, so they already had tons of cool stuff planned this year. And of course, Magic, which is my second hobby, Magic the Gathering, where prices across the board from super old singles and sealed product went crazy. We saw huge auctions. We saw a Black Lotus go for $500,000 on eBay through a PWCC auction. Um, you know, the collectibles world is on fire right now. All the new product that's come out during the pandemic has always been there's always been a shortage because the demand is so high. So we'll see how we kind of come out of this with the prices being where they are. Is it gonna dip hard? Is it gonna slowly kind of taper off? Are these new stimulus checks going to further double down on the pricing that's already pretty insane? And yeah. So another thing is kind of volatility. I think this is something that we should probably talk about at some point. We've seen Bitcoin hit a high of 63,000 a coin a couple of months ago or a few months ago, kind of as Dogecoin saw its big rise and Ethereum a little bit later. And since then, it's cooled down quite a bit. It's kind of hit the low 50,000s. It's kind of stabilized at 53, and then it's kind of been bouncing between 53 and 55,000 a coin lately. A lot of people are thinking that people are shuffling around their crypto holdings, putting it in Dogecoin and Ethereum instead, and especially with the threat of verifications with Bitcoin slowing down because the mining is becoming less and less efficient and less profitable. What does that mean for Bitcoin, and will there be changes to kind of the way that it's mined and it's transacted, and will that kind of start saving it from kind of its slow devaluation as it becomes less and less wanted as a way of transacting goods or services. One of the things that I myself did was I had quite a bit of money in Bitcoin, and as kind of Dogecoin saw its rise happening, and we're always waiting for those of us who are very long on Dogecoin. We're always waiting for the price to dip a little bit, right? When a pullback happens, when a whale starts to sell, kind of finding where the new floor price is. So recently, I turned a pretty significant portion of my Bitcoin into Dogecoin, just because I'm very long on Dogecoin. The community is so good. The reception worldwide has been so good for it. And the other thing is it's a worldwide movement, right? I think a lot of times we think very Hawaii centric. We think very US centric, but when you kind of look at the price of Dogecoin and the market cap change throughout the day, and even on the subreddit, there's this like camaraderie where North and South America will be like, all right, we're going to bed. Uh, we held through these whales, selling off. Europe, take over for us, and then Europe will be like, all right, Asia, take over for us, and Asia will be like, all right, US, take over for us. So it's kind of this neat little online community that spans the globe, and I think there's a lot of power behind that. Um, that something like Ethereum probably doesn't have. There it's not the same lighthearted kind of spirit in that community. Um, Ethereum, of course, is valid, right? It has its uses. I mean, you've kind of seen its price grow. Uh, yeah. Next thing I want to kind of cover, because I think we'll talk about this with a guest in the near future, is what are we going to start looking at when it comes to diversification, right? Are we each individual person has kind of their strategy and ways to kind of either mitigate risk or not, right? Like I think with the Wall Street bets kind of mentality, a lot of people are YOLOing all of their money into one thing and hoping that it rises dramatically, and then they make their money and get out. Uh, you know, how are you diversifying yourself or not diversifying your holdings? Is there anything that you're pretty high on? One of my friends that I play video games with uh, is doing some stuff on Solana, and he tells me a lot about the project. Tells me about kind of the core and the basics of it, as well as kind of the future for it. Um, when it first got listed, it was pretty cheap. It was a couple of dollars or a handful of dollars, and now it's like 40s and 50s, in terms of its value. So, even something like Solana saw a pretty big jump, and they have a pretty strong community dedicated to kind of monitoring the health of that particular coin. So yeah, in the comments below, let me know all the different coins you're kind of looking into. If you want to say like if you're mostly in one thing, or you're kind of spread out, all of that kind of information is always kind of cool to share with one another. And if you prefer not to say it, then that's fine. Just leave a comment saying so. It helps lead people to this, because people find some of this information helpful. But yeah, I think we're gonna start seeing a lot of institutional money being put into crypto, and a lot of institutional money. Basically, what I think is going to happen is these big hedge fund managers are going to diversify basically and have moonshots with 3, 5, 7% of their portfolio, which will probably be full of a lot of stocks already, just regular financial instruments. And this would be a way for them to kind of give them exposure to some really high upside, as well as it's a high risk category, so it could be some pretty big downside too. But diversify into altcoins, since kind of Bitcoin was the darling for such a long time. So once we see more of that institutional money that gives Dogecoin a lot more stability long term, like I think looking at where the market cap is now, even if it starts getting accepted everywhere, I think we kind of need to temper our expectations, because it can't rise like this forever, right? I personally think that $1 is inevitable at this point, but do I expect it to happen in a week? No. Do I expect it to happen in a month? No. Do I think it might happen by the end of the year? Maybe, right? I think we're going to face a lot of resistance in the 90 cent to $1 range, just because for the long time holders, that's been a goalpost, right, for them. And even though there are a lot of people trying to move the goalpost back to $3 or $5 on the subreddit. I think a lot of people manage their initial Dogecoin positions and put in as much money, thinking that when it hits $1, I've got this much money. So I think a lot of people are looking at that as the time to start cashing out at least some of their holdings, in which case we'll kind of see Dogecoin dip probably into the 70s, go back up to 90, dip back in the 70s, and we'll see a lot of volatility there again. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to buy back in at that point once you kind of see the dips happen. So we'll see what happens. That's my thought on how the market will react. Then again, I've been wrong. I have no idea, and I would have never guessed that Dogecoin in 2021, like in quarter two, would be above 50 cents. Yeah, so anything can happen right now, but I think people need to start tempering their expectations, right? A lot of people made a lot of money recently, and this would be a way for them to, if they get paper hands, or if it's not growing like it did in the past, right? Like they might exit their positions, and it might cause further instability in the coin. So we'll kind of see what happens market wide, just because there's a lot of question marks, right? Like I would qualify Dogecoin's rise as a black swan event, right? Something that has never happened before. It's unprecedented, and it probably will never happen again, right? One of the things that I was thinking about was, when Bitcoin was the one that was a trailblazer, it didn't have like this brand in the market, right? People made fortunes off of it. However, at the same time, its instability lost people life savings. And now that I think more people know about cryptocurrency, and it's just easier to obtain than it was back then, right? Like it makes the barriers to entry a lot lower, but it also means that it's easier for them to vacate positions as easy as they set them up in the first place. So especially seeing Dogecoin, right? Like a lot of people are saying, well, Bitcoin was version 1, where people saw the patterns, people were guessing where it was going, and we just saw the meteoric rise there. And then Dogecoin is the second happening of it. But I think it's very unlikely that we see something with this much momentum, just because as more infrastructure is built for cryptocurrency, then you'll have those barriers go away very quickly, right? If people are downloading apps for the first time in quarter 1 and quarter 2 of 2021, they're not having to download those apps in the future. So when there's an altcoin that's making a big splash, like people will have access to it and have liquidity very, very easily, unless of course you keep it on Robinhood. It's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not, right? So I think those are kind of things that I kind of keep in mind, where seeing this Bitcoin and Dogecoin growth pattern happen like it has for the both of them probably won't happen again, or if it does, it'll be in over a much longer period of time. So those are things to kind of take into consideration when you're doing some crypto investing. I think there's just people are becoming more savvy. The average person today knows more about cryptocurrencies than I would say people in previous generations knew about the stock market, right? Stock market's been around for a long time, and not only does this generation know about the stock market, a big part of it is the GameStop and AMC short squeezes that happen, but also with cryptocurrencies, right? Like there's the TikTok generation where people learn about it there. YouTube is huge, podcasts are huge, right? Websites, apps, and then of course influencers and professionals, or just people who have a lot of money, like Elon Musk and um, and that sort, and Mark Cuban. So, people have really taken an interest in this, and they're managing their money in an active way, which I think is good. I think tempering expectations is totally in order. Uh, so, I would say whenever you're putting money in, like, those are kind of things to think about. All right, I think that's pretty good for this episode. Next episode, I think we'll be having a special guest. Uh, I'll go ahead and I'll post it in the Hawaii Crypto Council group. And if any of you ever want to hop on the podcast and talk shop, just reach out to me, and we'll get you online. I think we'll be starting a Discord server for this, and that way we can kind of chat and talk story there. Other than that, I'll be working on like a beginner's guide to crypto in Hawaii, whether it's buying, selling, trading, anything like that. I know Hawaii has a lot more stringent rules than a lot of other states or countries, so I think something like that would be helpful, kind of just as a piece to kind of keep people abreast on the legislation and whatnot. And Ryan will probably be a good voice for that when we have him on the podcast. All right. Other than that, I think that is good for today. And thank you for listening. And if you like what we do here, please like and subscribe. See you later.